Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I could say we're reviewing the midterms, but from the looks of things, the midterms will be going on for about a month or so. Let's talk. Hello, Garland here, and we'll chat a little bit about the so-called midterms. All right, let's see what we got here, what we expected, where we are, what happened. There were a lot of people that expected a red wave. I did. I expected a bit of a red wave, and it didn't come to fruition. I wasn't rooting for a red wave. I wasn't rooting against a red wave, as you know. I'm an independent. And I have no use for either of these warmongering parties because I feel like, as I always say, this is one party that is masquerading as two. They are financed by the same donors, and if you look at the consistency of foreign policy, it's clear that the foreign policy of this government is not relative to any particular party. It just continues. This Ukraine project, it started 2014. One could argue long before that. We could talk about at the end of the Soviet Union, but let's go to the latest iteration of it. Started in 2014. It had a hiccup where when Trump won and he screwed the neocon project up somewhat in Ukraine, somewhat. But I mean, that's a whole long discussion. But eventually, they got their boy Biden back in, and the same people who were pushing this thing could continue where they wanted. And here we are, exactly where they wanted us to be. So obviously, if you have policies that continue throughout various administrations, then clearly it's not relevant to one party or another. So what happened? A couple of things. The Republicans didn't nearly get the victories that they thought they were going to be. The Democrats didn't lose as much. Now, keep that being said, both houses are still the House of Representatives and the upper house, which is considered the Senate. They still hang in the balance. It definitely appears as though the Republicans are going to get the House of Representatives. I kind of think that they're going to win the upper house. I do think they're going to take the Senate. I think we won't know for a month because I believe that the Georgia race between Herschel Walker and Warnock, it will be the one that decides the Senate. I tend to lean towards Walker in that one. And $1 billion is going to go into, billion. They'll spend as much money in Georgia as they do in the normal presidential race. But at any rate, so the Democrats may claim victory and still lose both houses. Then they're going to lose. I'm pretty sure they're going to lose the House. Whether or not they lose the Senate, I don't know. But whatever the case may be, if the Republicans get one of the two houses, still they're loaded with power because they can, if you are not in power and you get one of the houses, you can throw a monkey wrench in the whole works. And would mean something if they were going to throw a monkey wrench in the whole works, and they're not. The most, as I said, when I was talking about this, and I'm going to reflect on some of the things that I said post midterm, and then talk about how that affected the outcome. So one of the things that I was talking about, if you followed some of my pre-election coverage, was the similarity between the two parties. I said, look, if they get in, if you really think that the the party who supported all of the money going to Ukraine, supported all of this craziness going to the border of China with Taiwan, if you really believe that they're going some kind of an opposition party when it comes to foreign policy, they will be is equally as hawkish. And this is what I've felt. And this is what I'd said. They'll be equally as hawkish on Russia. Maybe a few people in there will be a little noisy. They will be far more hawkish on China, and they will be far more hawkish on Iran. Basically, they'll be like, we got to go to war with Iran and we got to go to war with China instantly. What are we waiting for? How come we're not at war with these two people? So either way you looked at it, you were going to get no respite from mad neocon policies with the Republicans. In fact, they may, if they get both houses, they may end up impeaching Joe Biden for not going to war with Iran and China and God only knows who. Not to mention, there is nothing that the Israelis could ever say that the Republicans wouldn't try to out Israel the Democrats on. Now, okay, that's some things that I said prior to the election. Let's put them in the context of the outcome of the election. And I think this makes sense. One of the things that I try to do when I analyze things is look for patterns. That's what human beings do. That's what gets us into so much of a mess. We constantly look for patterns. Unfortunately, we see patterns where they don't exist. Things such as we're watching a football game. You know how that goes. And some guy, like, you come over your buddy's house. Yeah, do you think they're going to win today? Yes, they are, because I wear my lucky hat. Yeah, and every time I wear that hat, they win. Oh, there you go, dude. I mean, that's what the whole game rests on, your lucky hat. Or some guy sitting there and he's like, I'm going to go open a beer. Psst, he opens a beer. There's an interception. He goes and gets another beer. He opens a beer. There's a fumble. I'm not opening any more beers. What do you know? Here, take this beer and open it. Why? Because every time I open a beer, there's a turnover, right? We find patterns where they don't exist. So we've got to be wary of looking for patterns. It's a healthy thing to do if you're analyzing things. It's an unhealthy thing to do if you're already kind of an idiot, because you won't realize that the patterns that you're creating are not association does not imply causation. You opened the beer and your team turned the ball over in football or made a bad play in soccer, whatever, right? And that happened twice. Because you opened the beer and next the bad play happened, doesn't mean the bad play happened because you opened the beer, right? There's what's the Latin term, which means something therefore, I can't remember the name of it. There's actually a Latin term for that, right? And it means something therefore because of. I'm sure people out there will know. But at any rate, so let's talk about this. And let's talk. That was a long-winded way. I like to talk, so don't mind me. That was a long-winded way to talk about patterns, right? Let's talk about the pattern. Look at 2008. 2008, Obama comes up and claims that he's something different, right? He claims that he's totally different than the Republicans. Actually, he ran a populist campaign, but it appeared to be a populist game. He ran as though he was some kind of a populist progressive guy that was thinking about the little guy. But if we revisited at the time, what Obama actually did was gave us a lot of fluffy rhetoric with no foundation. You know what I mean? We're going to be different. We're going to be nice. We're going to be good. We're going to treat people fair. We're going to support people. We're going to do all kinds of wonderful things. But he was really short on specifics. It was, it was the equivalent of "Make America Great Again," right? It was soaring rhetoric without specifics, but he came across as such a nice guy, such a different guy. And let's face it, when you looked at Barack Obama, you saw this black guy, you saw this young guy, you saw this energetic guy. Your brain saw something different. And he said he was different and he acted different and he was kind of cool. And everybody thought, man, this is kind of cool. This dude's different. And because of that, there was a blowout. Why? Because Americans believed, falsely, albeit in hindsight, but at the time, they believed that they were getting true opposition, that they were getting true populism, that they were going to get something different. And they came out in droves and there was a broad margin. Not only that, he brought, with his coattails, he brought the party along with him, and they wiped the Republicans out so bad that people thought, hey, we're getting something different. And we want something different. They were unhappy with the direction things were going. All right, let's go to 2016. 2016, what happened? You had Bernie Sanders, who had a message of class struggle, which was very, very popular. Bernie Sanders, as I understand politics, I'd had to pick him to beat Trump, to be quite honest. If you look at one of the things that happened during that period, Bernie Sanders at one point, might have been 2000, might have been that one or 2020, whatever the case, Bernie Sanders went on Fox News and he went to this town hall in like the reddest of red, the Trumpest of Trumpy country, right? He got a standing ovation. The people loved him, right? Why was it? Because he had the message of class struggle, the message of there's 99% of people. It wasn't race, it wasn't misogynist, sexist, transphobes, all of that crap. It was the 99%, which is 99% of America, are being screwed over by the 1%. That's a message of class struggle. That is a populist message. And people heard that, and it's a very attractive message. That message is very, very attractive to voters. I don't care what anybody says. The message of class struggle is and always has been attractive to voters, right? Economic class struggle. Sanders had that. And needless to say, the Democratic Party had to take him out because they couldn't possibly allow the message of class struggle to permeate their party, because it would easily, obviously, and quickly take over the message of neoliberal identity politics. And they couldn't handle that because that ain't what they're trying to do. So Hillary Clinton, they robbed Bernie, along comes Hillary. And of course, Bernie, he's going to go along with it. But at any rate, so everything said, all of the polls said Hillary wins. Remember, there's a 93% chance that Hillary would win, and she lost it by a razor-thin margin, actually. She actually, when it comes to votes. So razor-thin. People were expecting a big one, you get razor-thin. 2020, the issues that were going on the, there was a lot of unhappiness with COVID outcomes. People were kind of freaked out. The economy wasn't doing well, and people expected Biden to blow out Trump. Razor thin margin, 2 straight razor thin margins, right? But why is that? Why was if Hillary lost in a razor thin margin, Trump lost in a razor thin margin? Why is that? Because the parties were too similar, because their message was, I'm not the other candidate. They didn't have a message of class struggle, of economics. They didn't have a message of any soaring rhetoric about anything. It was simply, that guy's bad, I'm good. And when it came down to it, it didn't motivate people. So the usual partisan suspects in the Republican Party came out, the usual partisan suspects in the Democratic Party came out, and they went head to head, and there was a razor thin margin. Somebody won. So what happened here? Let's look at what the Republicans have done. When it comes to Ukraine money, it's been like almost near unanimous votes for this Ukraine crap that people are unhappy with, right? All the things that the Democrats have done that have been that the American people have been most unhappy with, the Republicans have supported it for obvious reasons, because the parties are too similar. So when it came time to have the midterm election, in the same way that Hillary and Trump were too similar in a lot of ways when it comes to economics, in the same that people, didn't have really see enough of a difference that there was going to be a blowout one way or the other. In the same way that Biden and Trump, they're both neoliberals in a lot of ways. Trump has his issues and some differences, but he pushes neoliberal politics. He pushes expansionist. Let's overthrow the government. Hey, we got to take Syrian oil. Remember Trump? We got to take their oil. We like oil. We're taking that oil. Right. In other words, that's imperialism. We can go around the world and do anything we want to do. And Trump was pushing that. He was a different brand of it, but he was doing it. Trump didn't want to go toe to toe with Russia. He didn't want to go to war with Russia. He didn't want to go to war with China. But these smaller countries that he could easily knock over and rob them, he was a stick-up artist just like the rest of them. Let's knock over these countries. Syria's got some oil. We like oil. We can take them over. He's a stick-up artist. If you're going to run the U.S. government, either one of two things: either you're a stick-up artist or you're JFK. You catch a bullet in the head. That's your options. If you're going to run the mafia, mafias do mafia things. And if you're going to be the don of the mafia is going to do mafia things. And if you don't want to do those mafia things, JFK. And RFK was running. They weren't waiting around for him to get in charge because they knew he was going to win. And they knew he didn't want to do mafia things. And they figured, we got to kill him later. Let's just kill him now and get it out of the way. Right? Okay. So we get to the midterms. What happens? Yesterday, ultimately, people are watching, and they had seen the Republicans, and their thing was, what are you going to do? Not be the Democrats? They didn't come out and give a clear pattern of policies, a suite, as it were, of policies that they would use to address the problems of the average person. And we already know, first and foremost, it was economics. And they didn't come out and say, this is what we're going to do. And it's something convincing. Here's what we're going to do. The Democrats won't do anything when it comes to your economic situation. We will. Here's what it is. They didn't do that. They just said, the Democrats are really bad when it comes to economics, so you have to vote us in. Well, that sounds good, but the only thing I heard from them was that they were going to cut Social Security, and that you can't do anything less popular in America than cut Social Security and Medicare. And that was part of their plan, and Biden damn sure would go along with it because he's a piece of crap too. So basically, the Republicans did not put forth a vision that separated them from the Democrats. So ultimately, all you got was the traditional diehard Republicans, the traditional diehard Democrats, and the Democrats were motivated by whatever, Roe v. Wade or whatever, but they're a cult. They were going to be whatever they were told to be motivated by, is that what they were going to be motivated by. Same with the Republicans. If they were told to be scared that the Democrats were going to do X, Y, or Z, that's what they would be scared of, because that's what they were told to be scared of, and they would show up. So what you got was the people who show up, and it kind of evened out. But it appears to me in some ways that the Republicans are still going to take the House because they got a little bit of an edge in some ways. And ultimately, the Senate's going to be somewhat tied. I think that ultimately, pardon me for yawning. Oh my gosh. I really think that either they get it early before Herschel Walker, but I think more likely they're tied, at the end, 50-50. I mean, what is it? They're tied 49-50 or whatever the hell, because if it's tied, if it's 50-50, the vice president is the deciding vote, because actually, if you didn't know it, the vice president is technically the head of the Senate. So if it's tied 50-50, the vice president is the head of the Senate. So therefore, the incumbent party has the tying vote via the vice president, right? So I think it will be 50-49, and then I think Herschel Walker makes the difference, and then there you got it, 51-49 Republicans. But it may not be that way, but most likely. But the other part of it is this: if the Republicans only get the House, if they get either of the two houses, congressional houses, entities, the lower house being the House of Representatives, or the upper house being the Senate, if they get either of them, they can still do a lot of investigations. They can't, you cannot impeach without the Senate. Impeachment is in the Senate. Now, for those of you who don't know, now the discussion of impeachment, every president from now on, this is done ever since, Clinton or whatever. Bottom line is this: for the most part, if a president is in office and the opposing party, the opposition party, has the Senate, we're at a place now where they're always going to get impeached. Trump got impeached twice. Biden, they can't wait to impeach him, and they don't even care what for. It'll be something to do with China, because that will work on behalf of the national security state, and the Republicans, as are the Democrats, are tools of the national security state. So the bottom line is, I think they probably win, and they impeach Biden. Something to do with its national security state, China. He's China, love China, the Chinese Communist Party, him and Hunter Biden, because they are tools of the national security state, and they're warmongers, and everything about China is bad. If you're a Republican, they're mirrors of each other. The two parties are mirrors of each other. If you're a Democrat, everything about Russia is bad. If you're a Republican, everything about China and mostly Russia is bad. They're just the same. There's just no difference in these parties. They're just a mindless cult, a brainwashed cult, right? So the bottom line is, if the Republicans, they can do some investigations, but they can only investigate what the national security state allows them to investigate. Let's not forget, a while back when John Brennan was running the CIA, the Senate Intelligence Committee was investigating the CIA for torture and stuff like that. The CIA hacked into the computer of the Senate of the Senate committee that was investigating the CIA. John Brennan lied to Congress and said they weren't. The Senate committee found out that he was lying at the scene. Now think about oversight in a democratic government. Right? There's checks and balances, and one of them is oversight. Congress is constitutionally empowered to have oversight over these security agencies. Therefore, they had every right to do an investigation into the CIA, and they started that investigation, and the CIA started hacking into their computers and doing nefarious things with those hacks. They found out about it. They were lied to by John Brennan, who was the head of the CIA. They took no action against John Brennan. You know what they did? They said to John Brennan, "We want you to investigate the CIA." Well, John Brennan was behind it. So they went and investigated and said, "Well, you're going to find this hard to believe, but we didn't do anything wrong." And Congress was like, "Fair enough. You didn't do anything wrong. We had an unbiased investigation in which the people who hacked us investigated themselves for hacking us, and found out that they didn't do anything wrong for hacking us, and that their boss didn't do anything wrong for lying about hacking us." That's how far our democracy has gone. There are no checks and balances to the national security state. So, do you really believe that the Republicans are going to do any investigations that are not sanctioned by the national security state? If the national security state wants to get rid of Biden, then they will be allowed to take him out. But the other part of it is either sanctioned by the national security state or originates within the national security state. Just like those investigations on Trump. Hey, we're looking into Trump. Really? Where'd you get the information? Well, you're going to find this hard to believe, but this CIA guy who's assigned to the White House just happened to be listening to Trump and found something that we think is illegal. Oh, what do you know? The CIA assigned somebody to the White House who happened to be listening in on Donald Trump's calls and heard something he didn't like and decided, "Hey, I've got to report this to the CIA." And they called this guy a whistleblower. They referred to him as a whistleblower, a CIA operative who basically, and if he was a whistleblower, Trump was found not guilty. And let me add this for those who think that you don't like Dark Brandon and you feel like he's going to be impeached. And there are a lot of people that know nothing about the impeachment process. And as soon as they hear that somebody's going to be impeached, they think to themselves, he's a goner, he's impeached. That the impeachment in and of itself is a finding of guilt. The impeachment is a process that's used. And the consummation of that process is a vote. So you impeach a president, which means you have a trial, right? And there's evidence, and the head of the Senate is wait a minute, if I'm not mistaken, is it the Supreme Court? The head of the Supreme Court, I believe, is the person who's in charge of who is the judge, right? But ultimately, there's a vote, and you got to understand that in the impeachment process is designed so you can never get rid of the president. The closest it came was, I think, was his name Johnson back in the 18, maybe 60s, 70s. Bottom line is this: he was with one vote. But here's the bottom line: why the impeachment process is designed not to get rid of a president. In order to get a conviction, you got to get 66 votes. You must get 2/3 of the Senate in order to get rid of the president, which pretty much means you got to get all of one party, because they're somewhere around 50s almost all the time, 55 to 45, 51, 49, it's anywhere in there, right? 50-50. So you got to get all of your people and maybe 15 or 16 of the other people in order to, of the other party, the party of the president. You're going to have to get a dozen and a half, between a dozen and a dozen and a half people who are members of the incumbent president's party, to vote for conviction in order to actually get a conviction. So the bottom line is this: impeachment is created so that no president will ever be impeached and thrown out of office. People say, well, Nixon was impeached. Nixon resigned. He resigned. He made a deal so that the impeachment process wouldn't be completed. The articles of impeachment were delivered, but ultimately, after the articles of impeachment were delivered, he made a deal to leave. And part of the deal was, we won't prosecute you. And that's the way it works. They're never prosecuting the president. So Dark Brandon will be, if they, as I suspect, could be wrong, as I suspect, after the Warnock situation, Dark Brandon finds himself in the clutches of the Republicans. Ultimately, they will investigate him for something to do with China at the behest of the national security state. Of course, it has to be China. If the national security state allows the Republican Party to investigate Dark Brandon, the finding will be a foregone conclusion that he did something bad and that China was related, because China's in the crosshairs. They're not going to go after him for Ukraine. Plenty to go after there with Hunter, and maybe some money going to his hands. That ain't the way it goes. China's in the crosshair of the national security state. That is what that'll be used for. But the bottom line is this: the fact that I can easily predict that, and anybody who's listening will say, huh. Somebody just said Nixon was pardoned by Ford. Exactly. They made a deal. They made a deal. But the fact that I can make these predictions and people listening will go, yeah, I'd pretty much say the same thing, tells you what the deal is. That the reality is we understand that the Republican Party is another appendage. It's another arm of the national security state. It's another arm of the billionaires. It's another tool of the same nefarious groups that control the Democratic Party. They just get to play with a few little other toys. They get to play with the toy of abortion. And I mean, let's be honest about it. Can we be honest about abortion for 1 second? It only applies to poor people. Whether you're for it or against it is irrelevant. It only applies. If you're a poor person in state X and you want to get an abortion, you can't do it because it's outlawed in your state. You're a rich person in the same exact state and you want to get an abortion. What do you care if it's what do you care? If I'm a millionaire, if I am a millionaire, and whatever, my girlfriend wants to get an abortion and I'm in Mississippi and they say no abortions, I put her ass in a plane and I'll take her to another state to get an abortion. Or if it gets outlawed in the entire country, I'll go to another country where you can get it. What do I give a crap about? The whole abortion issue is only relative to poor people that can't afford to travel outside of the jurisdiction they're in to get an abortion. I don't have a position. To me, as far as I'm concerned, that's another one of those fights I'm not getting into. And what difference would it make what position that I want? The courts are going to rule what the courts are going to rule. But who can argue that a rich person is going to go wherever they want to get it anyway? So it doesn't apply to rich people. That's why the reality is that's why they keep this thing around so they can use it every 2 to 4 years for for a political football. That's why they keep this thing around. Come on. Obama and his people had 60 votes. They had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate. They could have codified Roe v. Wade. Then, of course, they weren't going to do it. Because if they did, they wouldn't have that political football to play when they need it. They wouldn't have that tool when it comes time to scare the dupes and say, hey, dupes, yeah, these guys over here want to get rid of abortion. No, they don't. Oh, my God, they want to get rid of abortion. Well, if they were honest, they'd say for the poor people, the rich people can still go over where the hell they want to and get all the abortions they want. You know what I mean? It's kind of like Epstein Island. They're going to go to Epstein Island. You just ain't going to know they went to Epstein Island. And if you ever find out, they'll just, Ghislaine Maxwell, where's her black book? Where's her black book? Clinton, 26 times on there. And a whole bunch of them were on the island. They probably burned all of the manifests. They burned all of the pilot logs. They burned everything. So we'll never know who else was on there. And Alex Jones is sued for $1 billion. And Ghislaine Maxwell, the people who were flying back and to and fro on Epstein's plane, we can't even know who they are. None of them are. There's literally pictures of Clinton with like a young girls who were later revealed to be sex slaves of Epstein. Literally, there's like one picture, and there's a picture. He's got his arm around this young blonde cutie, right? There's another one where he's sitting there and she's massaging his back. Come on, guys. We know what time it is when a woman's massaging your back. We know what that means. We know what's happening. Come on. We're not stupid and dumb. You know what I mean? Like, okay, here's an example. A guy's got a girlfriend. She's a hot girlfriend. And he's like, oh man, my girlfriend's hot. And then like somebody texts him a picture of her like massaging some guy's back. Dude, you know what it is. There's no point in arguing it with her. She's like that. And Clinton's like, and she's grinning and she's 16 and she's squeezing the old trapezius muscles. That ain't the only muscle she's squeezing. Trust me. Every guy on here knows what that back massage is all about, right? So Clinton's doing his thing with some young girl, right? On Epstein's plane, and God only knows what else on the island. He's, cavorting around with 16-year-old girls. Nothing's happening to that dude. Nothing, because that's the game, right? We understand the game. So the bottom line is we get to, that's a long way to get back to where we are. It's a corrupt system. And I think people now kind of intuitively, there are a lot of people that know that it's a corrupt system. There's a lot of people like me that are like, oh God, I'm going to go to Maryland and vote only because there was a referendum for weed, and I, don't want to see people going to jail for weed. It should be legalized, right? So I'm going to go vote for that and vote for a bunch of independents, as kind of a protest vote. That's the most you're going to get out of me because I mean, look at me. I'm a guy here with this shirt on. U.S. Disinformation Governance Board, always watching. Come on, I know. Whoops, dropped my. I know what time it is. I know what's happening with this system, and I think that's a lot of people that like know what's up, and they're like, okay, guys, I'm going to rake leaves today. But the diehards, they're watching MSNBC and CNN and Fox, and they feel like they're going to make a difference. And now we're getting to a point where what we got left is voting with the diehards, voting with the true believers. Here, I'm trying to get a little comfortable. My jacket was all over the place. The true believers. And all you're going to get is a razor thin margin every 2 to 4 years because the parties are so similar, because they're run by the same people, and because neither one of them is allowed to offer anything dramatically different from the others. One of them would have to say something that the people want to hear in order to get a blowout, and they could easily get a blowout. If one of these parties were to actually talk the rhetoric of class struggle, that's all it would take. They wouldn't have to do much. Say, well, go back to that. The working class, the 99 cent are getting screwed over by the billionaires. You do that, you win in a blowout. But they can't do that because their job is to make sure that the working class gets screwed over by the billionaires. The Republicans are coming in here. They couldn't just come in and say, hey, what are you going to do, Republicans? Well, we're going to cut your Social Security benefits, Medicare. Well, you're screwed there, and pretty much anything else that helps you out is gone. But we do need some more tax cuts for the rich people. They couldn't come out and say that, but that's their plan. You know how I know that? It's always their plan. Why should this be any different? And as far as the Democrats, they do that. And then the Democrats say, vote for us and we'll undo what the Republicans did. And people are like, oh, okay, well, then they win. And people are like, are you going to undo what the Republicans did? And they're like, oh, well, we got to deal with these misogynists and transphobes before we do anything. I mean, come on. I mean, let's say we undo what the Republicans did. Is that going to stop the transphobes from being transphobes? Can't have that. We got bathroom bills we got to deal with. We got all kinds of stuff like that. So really, once we get done with these bathroom bills and stuff like that, when we get done with that, trust me, we're going to move on to what they'll say. They're going to do something with climate change. Really? Yeah, I mean, people like to still believe that Joe Biden does. These people in power, they don't view oil and energy as something that is used to heat homes, as something that is used for people to cook their food with or to run their. No, they view energy as a tool of power, a tool of worldwide manipulation, so they can control who does and who doesn't have access to energy, so they can control who can rise because they have energy or who can't rise because they have energy. They don't see it as, they don't even acknowledge, they will acknowledge the existence of climate change, right? Only from the perspective of how it can be used for political purposes to gain power. That's what they'll have a discussion about climate change, to rook the dupes to believe that they'll do something. And then when they don't do anything, they do the opposite. They're like, I'm going to address climate change. What are you going to do? Well, the first thing I got to do is get to Saudi Arabia and ask them for more oil. Anything then we got to start pumping more oil. We got to drill, baby, drill. Right. And then like the dupes will say, oh yeah, they're all over climate change. We can't have the Republicans in. Why? Because they don't believe in climate change. Yeah. Okay. Whatever. Amuse yourselves, as it were. But you ain't fooling a lot of us. We're on to it. So ultimately, I didn't take that into account, and I thought the Republicans were going to win bigger than they did. But keep in mind something. It is still possible, it is still likely that the Republicans take the House. It is still possible, and one might argue likely, that the Republicans take the Senate. And if they get both, they still won. It ain't like the Republicans, if you get the House and Senate, I wouldn't call that an L. That's not an L. You won the House and the Senate. But even by it's a razor thin margin. You know what that is? You win in overtime by 1 point. In the Super Bowl, in the NBA championship, in the World Series, in the World Soccer, but whatever, right? You win 1-0 in a shootout, whatever the hell, right? In soccer. Guess what? You get the World Cup. It doesn't, you don't have to win by 10 or 100. Either you won or you lost. Ultimately, at the end of the day, if the Republicans take both houses, then they've taken both houses. And the discussion of how much they took the houses by isn't quite as relevant because they got both houses and they pick the committees and they decide and they create the budget and on and on and on and on. And they nominate judges. I mean, excuse me, and they can vote on judges that are nominated. Bottom line is they get one of these houses. Now, this is what people are going to say. This is what they're saying on MSNBC. Well, that's it for Dark Brandon. His legislative agenda is dead. What the hell legislative agenda is dead? How can his legislative agenda be dead when he didn't have a legislative agenda? He's a neocon. The only thing the neocons care about is foreign policy, foreign wars, world hegemony. Let's rule the world. Let's, attack and degrade and oppress and depress the countries of the world. Haiti must be invaded. African countries, their governments must be overthrown. Innocent people must be bombed and slaughtered like dogs. That's the only thing Biden and his people care about. They don't give a shit about domestic policy. And the dirty little secret is the Republicans only care about domestic policy in so that they can extract more money from the poor and give it to the rich. And right now, the only reason that isn't the priority of the Democrats is because they're busy going around the world being involved in miscreant activity. When they're not doing that, they'll be happy. The Republicans will come in and say, hey, Joe, what? We got to fix things how? On the backs of the poor and the working class. What do you say? There's a social safety net. I think we got to dismantle that and make sure people get nothing. And Joe Biden will say, hey, I'm over here trying to start World War III, but if you give me the bill, I'll sign it. That's the reality. Joe Biden, a guy who couldn't get anything through for the last 2 years because of Manchin and Sinema, couldn't get anything through. I mean, come on, I can't do anything. I want to be the next FDR, but Manchin and Sinema won't let me. You damn watch this. If the Republicans come up with some ungodly bill that everybody on all sides of the aisle look at and say, hey, wait a minute, you want to cut Social Security by 99% and you want to change it so you can't collect that 1% to your 486, they're going to treat us the same way the FBI is trying to treat us with the Seth Rich laptop. 66 years before you're able to see how the stuff on the Seth Rich laptop, right? Or what's the other one? The JFK stuff, right? You can't see that for like 60 or 70 years. You know how it is. The Pfizer documents, it needs 75 years. That's how they're going to do Medicare. Yeah, nobody can get Medicare. Nobody can get Social Security for 75 years. And we're going to be like, what? When you're 75 years old, they're going to say, oh, no. We mean 75 years from now. I don't care how old you are, you can't get anything till 75 years from now. So only kids that are like 1 year old, maybe they'll live long enough to get it. And the way our lifespan is spiraling down in a very, very rapid fashion, ain't nobody getting none. So they're going to change Social Security and Medicare. So you get nothing. They will then take those funds and buy shit to go to Ukraine or probably Taiwan because they'll probably have started a war with China by then. Bottom line, you're getting screwed. If the Republicans lost, you're getting screwed. If the Republicans win, you're getting screwed. Nothing's changing. Neither one of these parties is going to do anything but screw you and give every freaking dime you got to the military industrial complex, to the banks, etc. And let me add this, they're going to like Trump. It's blame Trump. Yeah, and I listen to people. So let's talk about last night through the context of Trump. Everything is Trump. Well, did Trump win? What about Trump candidates? Trump ain't on the ballot. Trump has not been president for 2 years. However, he sells, man. He puts people in the stands. Trump puts people in the stands. So MSNBC, CNN, and Fox all have to talk about Trump, no matter what happened. The Super Bowl, hey, the Denver Broncos won. What do you think? I don't know. Who did Trump like? Trump liked the other team. Trump lost the Super Bowl because the team that he liked lost. Every single thing is, who did Trump want to win? Trump wanted that guy to win. Well, then he lost. And the Republicans, the Democrats were firing up the Russian bot machine. There was articles everywhere that said, there's Russian bots. They were all prepared that if they got beaten like everybody thought they were going to be beaten, they were ready to say Russia did it. But because they consider this a success, that they didn't get whitewashed, that they didn't get skunked, the Russian bot articles that they already had teed up. They'd written them by the dozens. Washington Post, New York Times had them teed up. They're ready to go. But they added some China and a little sprinkled some around, kind of like a soup. What do you got? Well, we've got a Russia base, kind of like you buy a soup and it has like a tomato base, maybe something like that, a mushroom base, right? Well, they had a Russian base for their soup, but they were going to sprinkle in a hint of Iran and a pretty good helping of China. Big lumps of China noodles were going to go into that soup that said we've been robbed. And so they just didn't get beat at bad enough to do it. So you know what you do with a good soup? You put it in the fridge, let it sit there a little while until all of the spices really start to permeate the soup, and it's better the second day. So they're putting their Russian bot articles. They're just going to change the dates in them for another 2 years, and then 2024 out comes all the Russian bot articles, because if they're running Dark Brandon, who's he going to be? You know what I mean? And it'll be razor thin. If he runs against warmongering, Israel can't do anything wrong, DeSantis, the Republicans will be again, yay! DeSantis is going to fix things. He's our guy. Yeah, hooray. And we're going to be like, oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, DeSantis is going to come in and say everybody he's going to come in and he's going to have like a picture, a word that just says Israel. And you'll have to come in every day and worship a sign. Everyone will have to have a sign in their house that says Israel. And you'll have to come in and you'll have to worship at the shrine/sign. You'll have to like burn a candle in front of it and worship, no matter how many Palestinians they're slaughtering, no matter how much they're violating the rights of Palestinians and treating them like farm animals. You will have to worship that Israel sign every day or pay the consequences. Or your digital wallet will be closed and you won't be able to buy anything. You won't be able to get in a car. You won't be able to do anything because your digital wallet will be closed because you didn't. They'll put a, those things that like the software that the phones have where they can tell when you're looking at them and they light up and stuff like that. That'll be on the picture. There'll be like software on that picture that says Israel, and it'll be able to tell that you're in front of it, that you're worshiping at it, how long you've been doing it. You have to have done the correct amount of minutes. Were you holding your candle properly? Were you breathing properly? Did you show the proper obeisance to Israel? That's what DeSantis is. For those who think this guy, here's a guy who was like, yes, we must pass laws that says nobody can get a contract with the government in Florida unless they support Israel in some way, shape, or form, whatever the hell that means. That's the guy that a lot of Republicans think are their saving grace. Best of luck with that. The same way a bunch of Democrats thought Dark Brandon was going to come in here and make the world a better place. The guy's going to come in here. He's a neocon and start other wars. He's a monster, and we'll all get what we got coming to us, because let's face it, we have been benefiting from this pirate ship going around the world, robbing people for so long. Sometimes, karma's a bitch and it comes back on us and we end up getting what we got coming to us, and we may be on the road for that. And let's just hope what we got coming to us ain't a mushroom cloud. That's all I got to say. But at any rate, so that's where we are now. I think post midterms, I think the Brandon team, well, first of all, they're psychos, they're sociopaths. Anything that happened, they were going to say we won. If they lost every seat in both houses, they were going to say we did better than we thought. We thought we were going to lose the presidency too, even though the presidency wasn't available for Republicans. We still thought we were going to lose it. So the bottom line is this: whatever happened, they were going to call it a victory. So they're calling this a victory. Even if they lose both houses, they somehow won. And then they will move forward and say, now we can really act with impunity. But however, let me say this: they're in the jam, really, in Ukraine. They're in a big jam there. They feel like in the long term, they can use this to weaken Russia, but Russia's getting stronger. But they are getting one thing they want out of it: the absolute destruction of Europe. The absolute destruction of Europe. They have three adversaries: the EU, Russia, and China. The problem is one of them thinks it's an ally. And it's a whole lot easier to take out your opponent if your opponent thinks you're on their side. So they're wiping out Europe. And let me tell you something. I hate to say it. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but you know me, I don't have any better sense. If you're so damn stupid that these bastards will blow up your pipelines. I mean, I hate to get on this again. I hate to start pushing on this again. Maybe I'm beating a dead horse, but I got to say this. If you are so stupid that these friggin' people blow up your pipeline, They wipe out your economy, total and complete disregard for all humanity on your entire continent. And you still think they're on your side? You ought to be wiped out. Your economy ought to be wiped out if you're that stupid. That's what stupid people get. That's what stupid people earn. And if you're still walking around, shivering around in Europe, carrying your stinking blue and yellow flag, you kind of got it coming. You kind of got it coming. Now, I got to say this to my dear friends in Europe. For those who have enough sense to realize that you're being snookered by the US, look, the US is doing what? You got cheap gas. They blew the damn pipeline. You ain't getting cheap gas anymore. They literally, physically, militarily attacked you. What do they have to do? You know what I mean? I'm just saying this. They're sending you a message. What the hell do they have to do? Hey, Garland, I'm your friend. Sure. And I go to shake your hand and you take out a lead pipe and you smack me across the head. And I'm laying on the ground and blood's pouring out of my head. And you reach down and say, hey, friend and ally, let me give you a hand. I ain't reaching up, because when I reach up, you're going to take the hand and you're going to take that lead pipe and I'm getting another one right across the head. I know it. I'm at least going to try to crawl away. Fool me once, shame on me. The Europeans are like, yes, the US is on my side. We're going to fix Russia. Ha, ha, ha. Us and our ally, the United States, we're here. And the United States takes their ass to the cleaners, blows up their infrastructure, causes their people to be infuriated with them. They're one by one, they're getting drummed out of office one after the other. And they're still following behind these assholes like a bunch of stinking lemmings right off the side of a cliff. Still running around with "we hate Putin" and blue and yellow flags. And as their flags are like literally freezing on the flagpole. And they're like, their leaders are like, hey, turn out the heat, dude. No hot water. Your life is a living hell. By the way, you're being deindustrialized. All your industry's going. You people are going to be impoverished. Your lives are going to be garbage. And your children's lives too, because no time soon, maybe sometime within the next 10 years, the U.S. will be able to replace LNG at 5 to 10 times the cost you're paying for it now, which means you can't make it. Oh, that's right. The government is saying they will give you some money to help you with your electric bill. How the hell long is that going to last? How long can they do that? That's just, you know what's going to happen? They're going to be impoverished. And you know where they're going to go for money? To the U.S. They're going to go to the World Bank. And you know what they're going to do in the U.S.? They're going to lend them the money. They're going to lend them all they want and then some. And then they're going to come back and say, pay us back. And the European countries say, we don't have anything. They're saying, go to say, we'll take that port, that airport, that port, this, that. They'll take them apart bit by bit. And you know what? You'll still have your blue and yellow flag. You kind of got it coming. If I'm no genius, I'm no superior intellectual, highly trained international analyst. I'm just a schmuck on YouTube, and it's blatantly obvious. You mean I can see it and you can't? You kind of deserve what you got coming. Not as an individual. Sorry about those, my beloved friends in the EU who are looking at this saying, what the hell are these idiots doing? Because there's a lot of them just like me. I'm just a schmuck on YouTube. You're just a schmuck watching YouTube. And we're saying the thing, what the hell's wrong with these people? Right? We're saying that you don't deserve it. Unfortunately, because you're in Europe, you're going to get the same outcome as them. It is truly phenomenal. It is truly one of the great economic revolutions in history. And when I say revolution, revolve, right? The bottom comes to the top. But when the bottom comes to the top in revolution, the top also comes to the bottom, right? So when I mean this, I mean an international revolution, in that if you're in Germany, you have one of the highest economic standards of living in the world. You're at the top in the world. Your ass is going to the bottom. So it's going to be a backwards revolution for you. It's going to be a revolution, all right. a revolution that goes the other way. And you know what? You know what the US is going to do? They're going to sell your ass LNG, liquefied natural gas, for 10 times the price. And here's what's hilarious about that. The Americans were like, yeah, you don't want to buy your gas from Russia. Why? Because they will use it as a weapon. And then we blew up the pipe. Isn't that kind of the definition of a weapon? And let me tell you something. When you are totally dependent, think about this right now. They blew up your damn pipe. If you are totally dependent on Dark Brandon and his evil forces for gas, for energy, you will have no independence and sovereignty. You don't have any now. What do you think you're going to do when you have to get all of your energy from the U.S. government? Look how they treat look what they're doing in Cuba. Look what they're doing in Venezuela. What do you think they're going to do to you, Europe? First of all, you're going to be every bit as poor as Cuba and Haiti. You're going to wish you were in Venezuela. You're so poor when Dark Brandon and his forces get rid of you. But when they really own you and you can't get energy from somewhere else, you will be, I'll use this term, Dark Brandon's little bitch. That's what Europe will be. America will say, do this. And if Europe says, we don't think it's a good idea. Oh, really? You don't, huh? Well, we got some LNG ships on the way. And it's going to get kind of cold without them. So if you don't do it, we're cutting off your gas. They will do. You see, that's projection. They will do to you exactly what they're saying Russia would do. Russia, right or wrong, Russia has been providing energy, the Siberian pipeline. They've been providing energy during the Cold War when it was the Soviet Union, and they literally had thousands of nukes pointing at each other. The Soviets continued to provide energy to Europe at a reasonable cost. They worked deals with Europe. So they had like projects where they both paid for it, and the U.S. threw monkey wrenches in it and blew up one of the pipelines back then in '83. If you don't know that story. But the bottom line is, so even during the Cold War, the Soviet Union was providing energy to Europe at a reasonable price. So what makes you think that now they're going to screw that up? It makes no sense. But if Dark Brandon's forces get their hands on your ass, you will be jumping like a puppy when they tell you to jump, or you get no gas, and you're going to pay 10 times the amount for it. Oh, and by the way, did I mention they're moving all of your industry is gone out of there, never coming back. So this is one of the greatest economic and industrial revolutions, where instead of we talk about revolution where the bottom comes to the top, we're talking about evolution, the same revolution, excuse me, where the top comes to the bottom, where the countries with the high standards of living in Europe their asses are going straight to the bottom of the barrel. You guys are going to be Haiti. There will be poverty, prostitution, drugs, crime. You won't go to, people will be like, you go, hey, whatever you do, it'll be like talking about going to like a really dangerous neighborhood. You know, it'll be like, hey, you know, there's a lot of places in the world I'll go, but Europe ain't one of them, dude. You think I'm suicidal? For God's sake, man, that place is a godforsaken hellhole. You're not going to live for 5 minutes if you go there. Hey, you got a free trip to Europe. Ah, yeah, right. What kind of an idiot do you think I am? What next? It'll be like Mexico, where there's like drug gangs and cartels running around. That's what Europe will be. And the Europeans will still have their blue and yellow flag saying we support Ukraine. I've never seen anything like it. Neither has anyone else, because nothing has ever happened like this in history. There have been countries that have been poor that have gotten better. There's been countries that are wealthy that have somehow lost their funds and their money. But there has never been a country that or a society, a continent that had an extremely high standard of living that woke up one day and said, you know, this ain't working for us. We want to be impoverished, alcoholic, drug addicted, prostitution, and sexual transmitted diseases everywhere. We just want to be a place that if there's a zombie apocalypse, the zombies would literally leave. If there was actually a zombie, Europe's going to be so bad. If there's a zombie apocalypse, the zombies will get on a boat and go somewhere else to eat people. They'll be like, hey, dudes, we're zombies, but hey, it's a little dangerous around here. How about we go over to the U.S.? We'll bite some of the Americans, you know, and it's a little unsavory around here. Kind of stinks, you know, we're zombies, but we don't like this situation. We're out. It won't even be a place for zombies. And if you're there, you're going to feel like a zombie, because the only way you'll survive is to eat each other. That's what the Americans are giving the Europeans, and the Europeans will be flying a blue and yellow flag, cheering all the way. Never seen anything like it. I have got to say that, my friends, is truly, it's a, in a paradoxical kind of way, it's a great time to be alive. In a paradoxical kind of way. You know what I mean? Like the Chinese say, may you live in interesting times. You can't get any more interesting than that. I mean, it's bad. It's not good. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a good thing. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, people who like cockfighting. It's pretty gross. I mean, you're going to sit there and you're going to watch two roosters with these claws tear themselves apart with blood all over the place. That's gross. I can't imagine that I'd ever want to watch it, but there are people that want to watch that. They find that interesting. Watching Europe is the equivalent of a gigantic cockfight all across the continent, and the people are like, hey, do you have a rooster in there that could tear me to shreds? Yeah, if they throw me in there, let's see how that works out. An entire continent that is committing economic suicide willfully. I gotta say, for a long time, the Europeans have argued that, hey, we are morally and culturally and intellectually superior to so many other parts of the world. That's why we're doing so well. Yeah, that they can throw that one out the window. You can throw that one right out the window. What do you think? Let's be honest. Go to Guinea-Bissau, go to Haiti, go to the poorest countries in the world, and say to those people, I got an idea. I want you to be even poorer. Here's the blue and yellow flag. I want you to stick this out your window, and what little food you got in your mouth, just take it out and give it to somebody else. And no heat, no nothing. They will kill your ass and throw you out of Haiti or Guinea-Bissau, the poorest countries in the world. If you propose that to them, they will kill you. You will never get out of that country alive. I will guarantee you. You do that to the Europeans, and they'll be cheering. They'll have a freaking ticker tape parade for you to come in there and throw their ass right into the freaking oven. I've never seen anything like it before. I've never seen this is a failed and collapsed culture. Now, I'm not saying the culture of Europe. I mean, you got great music, Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel. Come on, look at the history and the culture of Europe. It's beautiful. The food, get out of here, man. Great stuff in Europe. Great stuff. But when you get past the culture and you find an elite ruling class that is willing to throw the entire continent in the toilet and flush it, and a bunch of people in the continent that are so sheepish that they're willing to do that just because somebody feeds them propaganda. I know there are people on this chat right now that are looking at that like, yeah, dude, I'm not down with that, Garland. And I'm like, yeah, that's why you're on this chat right now. You're shaking your head like me. In the same way that I'm an American, and I'm like, there's people voting for Dark Brandon, and they're like, I saw people that I know. They're like black people in America. Yes, sirree. I voted yesterday to save democracy. I'm like, dude, you're black in America. You never even experienced democracy. You don't know what it's like. How could you save it? You never even had it here. So the reality is, the culture of the elite ruling class is collapsing in the West, and unfortunately for the sheep, by the time they figure it out, they will be on a spittle. By the time the sheep figure out that they've been had, they will have been skinned. They will have had nice herbs and spices rubbed all over them. They will have a stick stuck right through their asshole coming out of their mouth, and somebody will be turning them over a coal fire like that. That's how long it'll be before the sheep in Europe say, hey, perhaps these guys weren't acting in our best interest. What do you think? So maybe I got a little carried away here. I know that, I was supposed to be talking about the midterms, but me, sometimes I get a little emotional. I'll get a little passionate. I think that's why people like the show, because I'm not making this stuff up. I'm just trying to say let me say this. I am trying to voice the obvious. That's all I'm doing. I'm voicing the obvious. Everybody by now who has half a brain understands that the U.S. is deindustrializing Europe, robbing their asses, taking their industry, taking them to the cleaners like a mafia, going to sell them energy for 10 times what they want in the guise of, we got to stick together, guys, because we're all on the same side against the evil Putin. If you're that stupid, you kind of got it coming. I don't know. Maybe that's a wrong thing to say, but not the people. not the individuals, but as a in the aggregate, get the hell out of here. I'm done. At any rate, thanks a lot. Yes, somebody has. Let's look. Let's see what people. Let's see. I probably yeah, there's maybe a lot of Europeans. I can see why there's no super chats today. They ain't happy with me. I don't blame you. But I have a firm grasp on the obvious. That's my problem. A firm grasp on the obvious. Sparky says, remember Chris Ray is part of the Georgia Old Boy Network, which controlled Georgia politics. Sally Yates replaced him at King and Spalding Law Firm, by the way. Sure. Look, and you know what? The Republicans will do some investigations into Chris Ray or individuals at the FBI. The FBI is a crooked culture, the FBI is there. It is like, how you go to you have a country that's a dictatorship, a totalitarian country, and they always have like the government's ministry of evil police that goes around and makes people disappear and smites their political enemies and things like that. That's all the FBI is. It's masquerading as a police department. It is the Ministry of Official Enforcement for evil. That's what the hell it is. And do I know anything about the FBI? I used to work with the Joint Terrorism Task Force. So a little teeny bit. Let us continue. Sparky again says Abrams conceded defeat because it was part of the deal that the establishment made with Kemp for selling out Trump in 2020. Also, why Kemp's victory was lopsided while Warner versus. Here's the thing about it. Abrams is a shitty candidate. She gets all of her money from Bloomberg. I mean, I don't think Abrams wins this. She's a shitty candidate. She's a shitty neoliberal candidate who offered nothing. I don't think if we add any deal, she's so bad, you don't need a deal to beat Abrams. They've been sticking her out there for the last, I don't know how long. We've got a black woman. That was pretty much it. And she's like repeating the talking points of neoliberalism, and you could see through her like a cheap x-ray machine. So I understand what you're saying, Sparky. You're great. You make a lot of good points, but I do think Kemp didn't need a deal to beat Abrams. He could have tied both hands behind his back and beat a neoliberal piece of crap like her in Georgia. That's just my opinion. I think she's just garbage. She's horrible. Diane Sarah Chambers, apparently, Nadia Yvette Chambers, apparently you're right. I don't know what that means, but thanks a lot for Diane. I'm glad to see you in the house, or at least possibly in the house. And I'm kind of embarrassed, Diane, because, I've tried to be an intellectual about you and around you, and maybe you think I'm a smart person or at least a wise person, and I flip out. But this is who I am. I just flip out. I'm on. That's what kind of time I'm on when I start talking about what's happening in Europe, and I watch everyday working class people. They're not throwing you in the shredder in Europe. They're not throwing you in the shredder. They're not throwing you in a wood chipper. You know what they're doing? They're saying, I want you to take your money and go buy a wood chipper yourself. I want you to fuel it up. I want you to sharpen the blades in the wood chipper. And then I want you to take yourself, your wife, and your kids, and everybody dear to you. I want you to heave them in the wood chipper first. And then I want you to jump in behind them. That's what they're doing. And that's why I'm like, I find it amazing that I can watch people literally this stupid. I hate to use that word, but I think it may be appropriate. And that doesn't mean stupid from the perspective of intellect, not from the perspective of brain processing power. It means stupid that somebody can bamboozle and hoodwink you like that. Let me tell you something. I don't know if you noticed, you ain't hoodwinking and bamboozling Garland. You're not going to come up to me and show me a tree and say, hey, you know what you got there, Garland? What? A mushroom. No, I'd be like, oh, that's a tree. No, it's not. Look, we're going to bring people out here. Look, we've got a report from the FBI. We've got 7 intelligence agencies that says that's a mushroom. I'd say you can stuff those 7 intelligence agencies up your ass. It's a damn tree. What we've got now in neoliberal idiot world is the only thing they need to do is have an article from the Washington Post and an article from the New York Times that says that's a mushroom. And everybody will look at that oak tree, acorns falling off of it. And because they've got an article from the BBC and the New York Times and Deutsche Welle that says it's a mushroom, they will all agree it's a mushroom. And when Garland sticks his hand up and says, hey, guys, wait a minute. Look, here's a picture of an oak tree. There's an acorn. Look at that. Acorns laying all around the bottom. And I will present empirical evidence. Hey, let's look at the Latin name for oak tree, Ocus treeus. There you go. And look at that. And here's a picture. It's a damn oak tree. And I will present empirical evidence and scientific data. I can bring in an oak tree specialist, a guy with a PhD in oak trees, and he can give a dissertation on oak trees and prove that that's an oak tree. And all of these idiots need is some clown on the BBC, some schmuck to write an article in Washington Post to tell them it's a mushroom, and they will disregard every bit of data. I don't care. And they will go over there and they're going to say, I'm going to bite that mushroom. And they will bite right into the tree and wonder why they're choking to death on frickin' tree bark. That's where we are. That's where we are. And so I guess I am the crazy person. And I guess you guys are the crazy people. We're the crazy ones. The ones that say, dude, you're telling me that's an oak tree, but you're telling me that's a mushroom, but it's an oak tree. That's where we are. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to pay the price for that. They're going to pay, and they're going to pay dearly. And here, every 2 to 4 years, we're going to get an election, and by a razor-thin margin, the brainwashed cult will win. And then by a razor-thin margin, the red brainwashed cult will win. And they will give us exactly the same policies. But I think here in America, I could be wrong. I think their days are numbered. I think the time is coming where people are going to wake up. And when they do, they're going to start looking at other parties. They're going to start looking at every direction. Let's not forget, what did it take? It took the crash of 29 to wake people up. We are on the verge of that within the next 2 years. And God knows when the dollar dies, our economy will not be far behind it. And I think that's going to happen and people are going to wake up. Now, the Europeans will wake up, but it's to be too late for their ass. Ain't no way back. Their economy is fixed on cheap Russian energy. They're going to have pissed the Russians off so bad. The Russians are going to have other customers, and they're going to go back to the Russians and they're going to say, hey guys, let's do this Russian energy thing again, and let's get back to where we were. And the Russians going to say, you can kiss my ass. I'm over here with Xi Jinping. The Africans, they're cool, love the Africans. The Africans love the Russians and the Chinese. South Americans, they're all going to say, dude, we got things going on. Take your ass back and freeze. We ain't got time for you. They can come crawling back begging. They're going to say, look, the Americans are taking care of your gas needs. What's left of you, the ones that didn't die in 22 and 23, the few remaining Europeans that survived, what will the winners of 22 and 23 will have like some kind of a nickname. You know, like the Black Plague in Europe, where like 2/3 of Europe, that's a nickname, right? It was actually a disease, and there's an actual Latin name for the disease, but they called it the Black Plague. All these people died. It has a nickname. Trust me when I tell you this, there will be a nickname for this winter and next winter. The winners of death or something like that. The winners of icy death, some kind of shit like that. There'll be a nickname for those winners. Yes, do you remember the winners in Europe when 30% of the people died? Everybody over the age of 1 froze their asses to death, and the rest of the people had no fingers and toes. But, you know, they made it. The ones that could eat each other survived. That's what you're looking at, a Black Death with no disease. And come up with a nickname now, there will be a nickname for these. And you ain't going to like the nickname. Trust me, it ain't going to be like the winter of fun. Hey, the winter of joy, the winter of happiness. That ain't happening. It's going to be the winter of hell, but you can't use a word like hell because hell implies heat. And that's the last damn thing they're going to have. This winter is going to be bad. It ain't going to be pretty. They may very well run out of fuel before the end of the winter. But this is what I keep saying. I'll use this metaphor or whatever analogy. I'll use it again. You're running from, I don't know, a tiger, and he wants to kill you. And you get to the water's edge and you jump in and you start swimming, and there's alligators, crocodiles trying to eat you. And you get across to the other side and you're like, oh God, I think I'm going to make it. And you look up and there's a pride of angry lions waiting to eat you. There ain't no respite from this. I don't care how you get out of the water. You are going to be somebody's lunch. That's what's going to happen, right? So they're like, we think we can make it through the winter. If you make it through the winter, first of all, or cold is only one of the things that you have to worry. Starvation will be another one. And needless to say, with starvation and cold comes poverty and crime and disease. So all of those things are going to be waiting. But if you make it through, and it's like the first day of March, and you're like, oh my God, we made it through the winter. but we're out of fuel and our jobs are all gone. And we still need fuel, but we don't have any. And we should be filling our tanks for next winter, but we can't get any Russian gas to fill our tanks. So we're out of fuel now. And next winter, our asses are extra grass. So even when you win, even if you win, you lose. Even if you make it through the winter, what if there's a pride of angry lions waiting on the other side for of the river? You make it across the river. There's no respite for this. There's no way out for Europe. They have dug their grave. And actually, what they did was this. What was the movie? I remember a movie. It was Van Helsing. If you saw that, it was kind of a B kind of movie. But in one instance, this guy's digging a grave for Van Helsing. And like somebody hits him in the head with a shovel or something, and he falls in the grave and he's dead. They dug a grave for the Russians. They dug a grave. The Europeans leaders have dug a grave for the Russians. And guess what? Come this winter, the Russians are going to be taking nice hot bubble baths. They dug a grave for somebody else, and they are going to fall in that grave. That's the old analogy I got to use. Thanks a lot, everybody. I guess that's all I have to say. I guess I was really sorry about that. I was supposed to be talking about the midterm, so maybe I'll end it by saying, let's see what happens. There we go. I ended it on a high note, huh? My predictions, the House goes to the Republicans. Could be wrong, but I think the Senate will hinge on Herschel Walker, Warnock. I think Walker wins in Georgia. It's a red state. I think they can muster more votes in a red state in this kind of an election. So we'll see. Who knows? But that's what I'm looking at. Thanks a lot, everybody. Sorry I freaked out on you guys, but I do that every now and then. I'm kind of passionate, and I say what I got to say. A couple of things. You see everybody going across you see every and thanks for everybody who supported Diane Sayre. She's the best. I hope she doesn't stop. I hope she keeps running, and I will support her. You see everything scrolling across the bottom. If you can, help to support the channel, the main thing I'd like you to do is, in the words of Alex Christoforous, smash that like button. Speaking of which, Friday at 9 a.m., I'm going to be on the Duran. So don't miss that. I'll be on the Duran Friday at 9 a.m. with my brothers, Scott and better make sure it's 9. I'm pretty sure it's 9 to 10. Yeah, with my brothers, Alex and Alex. So that's going to be a blast. Make sure you check that out. Smash the like button. Share this on all your social media platforms. Make sure that you go to my Rockfin channel and become a member there. It's free to become a member. If you want to be a subscriber, it's $9.99 a month. I really appreciate those who can become subscribers. And people say, what about that $9.99 a month? You're robbing us, Garland. You should have on a ski mask when you ask for that. I'm like to be an honest person. I like to explain things to people. I don't like any transparency, because there are a couple people like, oh yeah, Garland, you want $9.99 a month. Let me explain it to you. Here's the real deal. Everyone who is a creator on Rockfin has to do at least one premium show per week. And that my premium show, as you probably already know, is with Scott Ritter every Monday from 9 to 10 a.m. We charge the Rockfin, in order to be a subscriber, is $9.99 per month. But if you become a 1-year subscriber, then it is they give you 2 months free. But here's the thing to remember is, are you being ripped off? No. And let me tell you why. Because on YouTube, you get a bunch of advertisements unless you pay, right? If you pay for YouTube, whatever the monthly pay a fee for YouTube, which I do because I use it professionally. If you pay for YouTube, you don't get any advertisements, right? Well, there ain't no advertisements on Rockfin. Rockfin is a subscriber service. It costs a lot of money. The people who run Rockfin aren't rich. Right. And of course, as we know, they got to eat. So they provide a free speech platform where I can say whatever the hell I want to say. OK, and it's perfectly free. Nobody has to be paid to be a member or anything, but a subscriber service that night, those who choose to be subscribers pay the money that keeps Rockfin going. So they don't have to be do an ads a bunch of advertisements. You don't have to deal with the advertisements, and they don't say anything. I can cover anything I want to. They're going to leave me alone as long as it's not, I'm not violating any laws. So for those who ask what that $9.99 a month is, it's a subscriber service. Actually, Rockfin, the subscriber service, is what keeps Rockfin on the air, so it can be a a free service for everyone, and so they can do not have to do advertisements. That's why all creators have to do at least one premium show per week, and try to get people to be members so they don't have to do advertisements, and the people that can run the damn thing can eat. You keep in mind something, and they're not selling you. If you're a member of YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, or whatever, and they ain't charging you, you're the product. They're selling all of your information. Rockfin's not selling your information, and they're not flooding you with advertisements because we have some subscribers at $9.99 a month. We still provide the content for free to everybody, but we do a premium show once a week to try to get subscribers so we can keep Rockfin up going and going as a free speech platform. And we don't have to have a bunch of advertisements. And I don't think that's unfair. So I say I do my part to keep this thing going. I think it's a valuable platform. And if you look on Rockfin and you find all the stuff you'll understand why they cover all kinds of stuff that you couldn't even dream about, especially all the COVID stuff that you couldn't dream about covering on YouTube or whatever the case may be. So that's my spiel for those who've asked me about Rockfin. That is my spiel about Rockfin. Please become a member if you can afford the $9.99 a month membership. Become a member if you can afford to be a script subscriber. I would really appreciate it. If you're not, don't worry about it. You're going to miss the one premium show I do a week with Scott Ritter. That ain't the end of the world. I do 20 minutes of it on here anyway to try to do the best I can for my people. But thank you very much. Do what you can. You see all the stuff scrolling across Cash App, you name it. If you're watching this on Facebook, if you're watching this on Twitter, if you're watching this on Twitch, which I don't know if anybody's ever even on Twitch, but if you're watching it, make sure you go to Rockfin and become a member. Make sure you go to a member or a subscriber. Make sure you go to Twitter and not Twitter. You go to YouTube, and subscribe to my channel and click the little bell so you get notifications. And don't forget, I'll be back on tomorrow, of course. I'm on as much as I can, and be on with the Alex and Alex on the Duran Friday morning. Peace. Thanks a lot. I'm out.